The calm waters of the South China Sea reflect the early morning sun on August 13, 2025, at 7:46 a.m., as the radar of the USS Higgins detects a new contact. The harsh, firm voice, distinctly Mandarin Chinese in accent, says over the radio, "U.S. warship, you are violating Chinese waters. Leave as soon as possible." From the deck, sailors gaze out to sea. Despite the calm appearance of the water, the tension is evident. Beyond that horizon lies Scarborough Shoal, a collection of rocks that are barely visible above the water, but are at the center of a very controversial maritime dispute. According to Washington, the area is uncharted territory that must abide by international law. Beijing views this region as Chinese territory. The People's Liberation Army Navy is here today to support that claim. Gray hulls appear on the starboard side a few moments later. Alongside the American destroyer, Chinese vessels fell into formation, creating sharp waves in the blue. According to the Chinese, they are observing, alerting, and thwarting an intruder. The United States views it as a freedom of navigation operation, a legitimate transit meant to subvert Beijing's expansive claims. The U.S. warship is operating so close to Scarborough Shoal for the first time in 6 years. Now, every radio call and slight change in direction or speed is a move in a dangerous game of brinkmanship where neither side wants to blink first. A small shoal with huge risks. Scarborough Shoal appears inconsequential, with only coral and rocks forming the surface. However, its location makes it invaluable. Scarborough is firmly located within Manila's Exclusive Economic Zone, EEZ, as defined by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, approximately 120 nautical miles from the Philippines. Beijing has a different perspective. Scarborough is part of China's expansive Nine-Dash Line, which spans almost the whole South China Sea. Chinese Coast Guard and Navy warships have been here virtually constantly since 2012. They have established patrol routes, prohibited Filipino fishermen from fishing there, and turned the reef into a de facto forward base. Scarborough is an important fishing location and a national symbol for the Philippines. It serves as a strategic outpost for China, allowing it to monitor shipping, project power, and expand its naval presence throughout Southeast Asia. Trillions of dollars worth of trade pass within striking distance of these reefs every year. Control over sea lanes, leverage in any future conflict, and the ability to affect the Indo-Pacific power dynamics are what matter here, not rocks. The USS Higgins enters that stage, a speck of coral with worldly significance. Conflicting storylines. Beijing's version is disseminated through official media within hours of the encounter. The PLA Southern Theater Command claims that, at Huangdao, the American destroyer Higgins entered Chinese territorial waters without authorization. Naval units kept an eye on the intruder, warned them, and chased them away. The phrase "drove away" is deliberate. It conveys a message of strength at home and a warning overseas that no foreign vessel will be permitted to challenge Beijing's claims without facing repercussions. The message is the exact opposite in Washington. While acknowledging the Higgins' presence, a Navy spokesperson brushes off any indication of a retreat. They contend that the operation, which asserted the right of innocent passage under UNCLOS, was conducted in accordance with international law as a typical freedom of navigation operation, FONOP. The contrast is well known. Two powerful nations, two incompatible tales, both crafted to support political objectives. A floating fortress, the USS Higgins. One of the U.S. Navy's most adaptable and well-equipped vessels is the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, USS Higgins, DDG-76. With a length of 155 meters and a displacement of over 9,000 tons, it is designed for both power projection and survival. The Aegis combat system, which can track and engage hundreds of targets at once, is at its core. Continuous air and water scanning is done by the ship's Spy-1D phased array radar. Its vertical launch system is capable of launching ESSMs for close-quarters defense, Tomahawks for long-range land strikes, and SM-2 missiles for air defense. Harpoon anti-ship missiles are ready on deck. A final line of defense is provided by two Phalanx Gatling guns, which are close in and shoot 50 rounds per second. Adversary senses are jammed by electronic warfare suites. This ship is difficult to intimidate. The Southern Theater Fleet of China, the Southern Theater Command of the PLA Navy, which has established a policy of escorting, warning, and shadowing foreign warships, is in opposition to it. Their 054A frigates and destroyers, which are frequently the more recent Type 052D, are well equipped with sophisticated phased array radars, YJ-18 anti-ship missiles, and HHQ-9 surface-to-air missiles. The objective is to approach close enough to intimidate, sometimes within a few hundred meters, rather than to fire first. The phone-ops are carried out by the U.S. Navy in a methodical and composed manner. No radio chatter, no combat signs, steady speed, and steady course. In general, the PLA Navy adopts the opposite strategy: aggressive parallel courses, rapid approaches, and a lot of hails. These strategies result in close-quarters encounters where each rudder order is recorded and scrutinized in the constrained waters of Scarborough Shoal. The goal is to force the opposing side into an error, a turn, or a retreat that can be presented as a political victory, not to make the first shot. Power versus law. Law, not just land, is at the core of this conflict. Under UNCLOS, coastal governments are guaranteed sovereignty within 12 nautical miles and resource control within 200 nautical miles. Far inside the Philippine EEZ is Scarborough Shoal. The Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague ruled in 2016 that China's 9-line claim lacked legal foundation. The panel also ruled that Scarborough was unable to create its own EEZ because it was uninhabitable. Despite not being a signatory to UNCLOS, the United States regards its navigation regulations as binding customary law. Phone-ops is a tactic used by Washington to refute overly assertive claims, such as China's claim to sovereignty over the waters surrounding Scarborough. When foreign warships show up, Beijing quickly deploys patrols, blockades, and other measures to enforce its claims, rejecting the ruling outright. The Higgins presence posed a direct threat to China. It was a legitimate transit across international waters for Washington. The dispute is more about who gets to decide the rules for one of the busiest waters in the world than it is about a reef, unresolved issues. To what extent did Chinese ships actually approach? What was the number of vessels involved? Were there planes in the sky? These specifics are not available to the public. Beijing claims Higgins was expelled. Washington says it was unfazed and continued on its course. Images, videos, and tracking information have not been made public by either party. The playbook includes that uncertainty. There are recordings, but they are only distributed when they lend credence to the story. Two articles that were each written to have the greatest possible political impact were the end result: a broader trend. The Scarborough incident is not a singular flare-up. It came during weeks when Indo-Pacific activity was at its peak. Over the Spratly and Paracel Islands, Chinese Coast Guard and naval patrols were taking place almost every day. PLA Air Force sorties frequently entered Taiwanese and Philippine air defense zones. Beijing conducted extensive live-fire exercises in early August that included amphibious landings and missile launches. In a clear indication that resistance to China's claims is getting more coordinated, the Philippines and India held their first-ever joint naval training in the same waters a few days later. Washington saw the Higgins passage as a component of a larger endeavor to reassure friends by remaining visible. It was another unwanted intrusion into a territory that Beijing views as strategically important. Additionally, timing was important. Manila had only a few months earlier allowed U.S. forces to enter under the terms of the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. Additionally, Scarborough is about 300 kilometers from Luzon, the largest island in the Philippines, and a current U.S. activities. Allowing an American destroyer to arrive here without opposition would set a disastrous precedent for Beijing. The aftermath. No ships had collided, and no weapons had been fired by the time the Higgins passed the shoal. Nevertheless, both capitals proclaimed victory. The official narrative of driving away a U.S. warship reinforces Beijing's defense of its sovereignty. Refusing to retreat is crucial for Washington because acknowledging defeat would nullify decades of phone-ops. It's possible that the truth is somewhere in the middle. However, perception is more important in geopolitics than accuracy. A risky examination, priority responses, loyalty badges, and the opportunity to contribute to the preservation of significant seafaring narratives. Because it's not about who blinks first in the most contested waters on Earth. Making sure you remain in the game when the other side does is the goal, following seas and fair winds.